Hello and welcome to the Engerati studio here on the second day of Itron Utility Week. I'm joined now by Dr. Michael Weber, who's the Deputy Director of the Energy Institute at the University of Texas. And Michael, first off, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming here, first thing. We, in preparation for this interview, and there is another interview I've done with your colleague Juan, who talked a little bit about the resourcefulness program and how that's being delivered digitally. But the question I have for you is, why did you design that resourcefulness program, and what were you trying to achieve that wasn't already being achieved within the curriculum?
That's a great question. So at the University of Texas, I do a lot of teaching and research, and one of my passions is around more mindful management of energy and water resources. So this is a subject of something I study with great depth with my graduate students with research, and I include it in my teaching. And I also have a passion or ambition to teach very well. And then you mentioned Juan Garcia, who's my colleague and collaborator. He and I have been working together for about a decade, mostly on ways to incorporate technology or new approaches to improve education. So he and I worked on that in the classroom in a more traditional collegiate setting, in a classroom with a professor with students. And then several years ago, we started dabbling with different ways to take that educational approach and take it online, or take it to television, take it to other places. And so we've been working together for a while, and he's been teaching me slowly about more design-centered teaching, new approaches, not just the standard lecture at the front of the room. And that has yielded a couple of different things: television shows, podcasts, you name it, but also led us to more digital, interactive curricula. And so we made resourcefulness, which is an energy water nexus curriculum, which is digital. It's therefore a natural for digital natives who learn this way. Our kids today don't learn from textbooks. That's something that feels very dated. And so by making it more interactive and digital, we're teaching the way kids are learning. And I think it just came together naturally that way.
And in terms of the program, I mean, what's the outcome? What's the value you were trying to? I mean, aside from good teaching, when you put something like that together, you do it because you feel there's a gap, or there's something that's not motivating young folk. I mean,
I think there are two gaps.
Yeah.
One is there's a lot of energy information, a lot of water information, but it had not been covered very well, the relationship of the two. So there was a gap in information and knowledge. And so that gap motivated a lot of my research program. How do we fill in those gaps in knowledge and then put it together in a way that makes sense? The second gap is teaching materials that felt dated or static instead of the interactive, dynamic world around us. So the world is interactive, why shouldn't the educational materials be interactive? The world is dynamic, why shouldn't the educational materials be dynamic? So there's a gap on just the science, on the knowledge, and then a gap on the educational approach. And then with resourcefulness, we hope to solve both gaps simultaneously.
And one of the things that I've commented on quite a lot, and we've talked about on Engerati as well, is this idea that the energy sector needs to do a better job of making itself sexy, for want of a better word, so that these young, so talented people see it as a potential destination, see it as a potential career. Because in my view, it's kind of got that double potential. Not only is it interesting with the volumes of data that is coming in and what we're doing, but it is actually something where you can make a difference to the world, right? Rather than spinning up another data center or whatever it is, you're solving a real world problem. Do you see that as an issue? Is that a real thing?
It's a real thing. So the energy and water systems are critical to our economy. They're critical to our way of life. When the energy and water systems fail, it's a life or death situation for many people. It affects our livelihoods, our quality of life, you name it. This is critically important. But it does have a branding problem. When people think about energy, they think about explosions or coal mines or black lung or something like that. They don't see all the criticality or the importance of it necessarily. And then they have new companies come along in the IT sector, healthcare, which are very important also. They add a lot of value to humanity, and they look very attractive. And they have mottos like, don't be evil, that are very attractive to students and that kind of thing. And so that's great and well done by those industry sectors, and they're important and we like them, but they don't exist without an energy sector. It's hard to have an IT center or a data center without electricity. It's hard to have a really robust healthcare system without energy. And so energy is at the root of a lot of these things, but energy hasn't actively told people, hey, we're important and you're important to our success, which means you're important to the success of society as a whole. Because people had always taken it, they sort of knew that, but now they sort of take it for granted. So now there's a situation where the energy sector, all up and down the supply chain, it's not just the death of coal that people talk about, but also solar and utilities and smart management of resources, is going to have a recruiting problem in a few years when a wave of retirements hit, and then you have people ready to go. And so they have to start now to get that pipeline of talent ready to go.
Because they were saying in the, what was the stat, that 50% of people are going to retire in 10 years.
And I think that might be a state of Washington stat, I can't remember, but that's typical of the industry as a whole. There was a wave of hiring about 40 years ago, now there's a wave of retiring happening now. And this has happened before, in the way the industry's always solved before is like, well, we'll put up a job ad and people will apply and we'll hire them. But now what they're starting to recognize is that, well, those talented people applying for jobs have options, and they might not choose us if they don't understand how important we are, how impactful we are, and how exciting we are. And so the rise of artificial intelligence and big data, these things are actually very IT heavy and very interesting and impactful. And so it's important for industry to explain this is where some of the exciting innovation's happening.
And do you think that the industry, you know, in your work in putting together the curriculum, you know, how IT heavy is it? I mean, does this industry need to do almost like a rebranding exercise? And it's like, look, we're not a heavy industrial project management industry anymore. We are a IT, you know, technology business, and that other stuff.
I think there's a critical branding problem. Absolutely, this is a problem not just for utility sector, also for oil and gas, you name it. From about the 1930s to the 1970s, the wave was to build stuff, and that was very exciting. We're going to pour concrete and build the power sector, for example. From the 70s to now, it was around operating the power sector. We're going to operate the power sector as well as we can, and those are exciting, motivating events. But I think for the new wave of future employees, they're not excited about building stuff, they're not excited about maintaining stuff. They want to innovate, they want to reduce environmental impact, they want to achieve sustainability. They have other social goals in mind, and industry to recruit them will need them, and industry probably needs to have those goals anyway. So it's the timing's good and the match can be quite good. But industry has to be nimble with this and be ready for it. In all honesty, industry
nimble isn't the word
nimble
you'd associate with this industry.
When people think utilities, they don't think nimble. When people think oil and gas, they don't think nimble. But they are more nimble than people think. They have much farther to go. But they need to be nimble with their brand at least, if not, and everything else to get these students. So the teaching approach really isn't about IT and data centers, but is dispensed over the internet. And so there's some subtle connection there that the information is available through the world of IT, and therefore IT is relevant.
And how do you think, you know, when you were putting together the resourcefulness program, I'm interested about this energy-water nexus.
Yes, yeah.
You know, because we've talked about it quite a lot, but when you talk to, so conceptually it's there, but when you talk to water people, they think they're water people. When you talk to energy people, they think they're energy people. So who's actually talking about this nexus, and where are those little joints?
And there is a challenge. Historically, the energy planners assume they have all the water they need and don't talk to the water guys, and the water guys assume they have all the energy they need and don't talk to the energy guys. But there's this relationship where they depend on each other, and as a consequence, if there's a problem in one, it becomes a problem in the other, where you can have these cascading failures or these vulnerabilities ripple through the system. So it's a real problem. I would say that when I first started tackling this about a decade ago, it felt like no one was talking about it, very few of us. Now there's a more robust academic approach to this. Industry's coming along as well, where we're looking at the problem, analyzing it, dissecting it, proposing solutions. And now there's a broader conversation about it. It hasn't quite made it to the policy and planning process, so we're not designing our systems with the right thinking yet, but at least the research community and the corporate world is sort of thinking about, saying, okay, there's a real issue. We need to prepare for this world where energy, water are interconnected, and we to build in resilience or other goals, maybe lower environmental impact, we need to design the right way for that. So I don't think it's rippled all the way through to the way the city makes a decision yet, but we're much closer now than a decade ago.
And you know, I'm just conscious of time on this interview. You were saying about your words of, we're not designing the systems the way they should be.
Right.
You know, can you give us a little overview in the time we've got left of like how they actually should be designed?
We've always designed our systems with cost and access in mind. Do people have access to water and electricity, and is it affordable? Then they add in a degree of reliability. Is it reliable, affordable, and accessible? But now we need to add in things like, well, is it also low impact on the environment? Is it sustainable? Is it resilient in a world that's warming? So not just reliable from your traditional challenges, but now reliable in the face of more natural disasters, more intense drought, more intense flooding, more incredible windstorms, that kind of thing. So we're adding additional layers of complexity to the system.
So it's
and
the
we're not designed for that.
sustainability of the system that really needs to be looked at.
Physical sustainability,
Right.
economic sustainability, and environmental sustainability, absolutely. And those weren't the driving requirements from the 1930s to the 1970s, for example. Those plants are just now retiring. We have a chance to rebuild. We could rebuild in a better way.
And how, I mean, in terms of someone watching, I mean, could you theoretically bring that to life? You know, if I
hope so.
put you in charge,
Yeah.
And I said, right, what would you do? Can you just paint the picture of how you would put all of this together, and you know, what type of plants would you?
Yes.
Plants, as in
Power plants. Yeah, although
yeah.
plants in the ground might be an answer as well.
Yeah.
So there are a whole body of technical solutions, better engineering, and a whole body of non-technical solutions, better policies, better individual decisions. The technical solutions are things like water lean energy options, meaning power plants that don't need water cooling, or low irrigation biofuels, things like that. There are also energy lean water solutions. I mean, water treatment systems don't take as much energy. So more efficiency on the technical side, more data, smarter water, smarter energy, so that we can track the system and wring out additional efficiency because we know where the losses and wastes are. There's a whole body of technical solutions that we could invest in. And then there's a whole body of these non-technical solutions where we as individuals should turn off the lights and turn off the water, think more carefully about how much we're going to water the lawn, for example. And we need to make those decisions at a personal level, but also at a city level, a state level, a federal level, where we build in conservation and policies that encourage resourcefulness and mindfulness over our resource management in a more deliberate way. So there's a whole suite of solutions out there, but we have to choose to do them. And so people like me have to go around and try to educate others about, hey, this is important, and we have a lot of value from tackling this the right way.
And what is the institutional disconnect that is stopping organizations from behaving this way? Because I remember, I mean, this is a tangential reference, but I remember I attended a lecture by the then CEO of Marks and Spencer's, which is a large retail outfit in the UK. And they said they implemented this Plan A initiative because the CEO said actually sustainability is good for business, and he made that mental connection. Is that what's missing? That people don't understand the sustainability and circular economy is actually a good business decision?
It's a great business decision. So I think there's two problems with our mindset. One is short-term thinking versus long-term thinking. I think we're way too short-term with our thinking, especially in the United States. The other is we're much too local.
Well, that's a global problem.
It's, I think some countries are more long-term than others. And then the other problem is we tend to be too local with our view instead of global. And let's take just the short-term, long-term. In the short-term, the sustainable option looks like it's more expensive and therefore not the economic option. But in the long-term, the economic and the environmental option are the same. Which, by long-term, I mean 20 years or beyond, 100 years, not next quarter, not next month. It might cost more to do the environmental solution, but in the long term, that saves you money. Especially because in the long term, you can't make money if people are dying from air pollution or don't have water to drink and that kind of thing. And so if you take long-term thinking, this false choice or debate between environmentalism and economics goes away. They converge to the same answer. I think the same thing happens with local versus global. We tend to get too obsessed about our backyard and our children, but there's a saying that there's no such thing as other people's children. Have you ever heard that? They're just children. And children around the world are all children around the world. And making a decision that benefits our children at the expense of someone else's children isn't quite right. So we take a global view that what we do here affects people around the world that haven't been born yet, then we'll make a different decision. And that all converges. So if we fix our mindset to be more global and long term, a lot of the debate falls away. The solutions become clear.
And on that note, I think it's a perfect time to leave it. Thank you very much for joining us. It's been a fascinating interview. And thank you as well for watching.